Boneworks is one of my favorite games of all time. I put it up there with games like the original Half-Life and the original Fear. I love it that much. Yet, I don't feel the same way about Bonelab. Let's talk about why. Hey, Jarek here, and this all really hurts to say. When they announced that Bonelab was releasing in under a week, I was ecstatic. I've been looking forward to this game for such a long time. I love Boneworks. Now, to clarify right away, the point of this video is not to say Bonelab is a total waste and a big disappointment and isn't worth your money and is a bad game, because I don't agree with any of that. I do think Bonelab is worth the $40 they're asking, especially because they're asking $40. It's not even a full price game, it's $20 less. Or $30 less if you ask Activision. Thanks, Activision. Why is this a thing? I was afraid this is going to come to PC from consoles doing this, but now that Activision's done it, I guess everyone else is going to jump on board. Games shouldn't be $70, especially if they're full of microtransactions. You can't use the excuse of microtransactions to pay your devs and then raise the price too. It's one or the other, not both. Anyway, Bonelab is only $40, and that's a really good price for what this is. I do think there is a bunch of improvements to the original Boneworks, just not on the campaign side. And if you want an improvement while playing VR, I can tell you how to look cooler. No, I can't. You're gonna look dumb no matter what when playing VR. You're strapping something to your face and flailing around. No matter how cool you feel in Beat Saber, you don't look cool. But I can offer you cooler looking shirts, because today's sponsor is IntoTheAM. Now, I talk about IntoTheAM shirts a lot, but they do offer more than just shirts. For example, they have hats, they also have hoodies, they have coats, they have pants. They're a clothing brand, but their flagship sales are definitely their shirts, and they're constantly getting new shirts in if you go to their website and check new arrivals. I love these shirts. I wear them all the time. They're incredibly soft. They don't have a tag to scratch the back of your neck. They fit me very well. I know that's subjective, but for me, they fit perfectly. They really are high-quality shirts with very unique designs. So if you want to check out any of this stuff for yourself, go to IntoTheAM.com/dragonshirts, and this will get you 10% off site-wide. And this stacks on top of their bundle deals. You can get 3 basic tees for $45 or 3 graphic tees for $60. So as always, a huge thanks goes to IntoTheAM for sponsoring this video. They are a pleasure to work with, much easier than most other sponsors. Let's talk about Bonelab now. So before I really start talking about what disappoints me in the campaign, I want to talk about some of the positive, because again, I do think it's still worth $40. Very quickly, you will gain access to the Bonelab hub, and there is a lot to do here. There's tons of different mini games ranging from parkour to big-sized bowling to almost Garry's Mods style stuff, and to what is arguably the biggest selling point for me, mods. Bonelab has modding tools and encourages all the modding you could want. This is a huge improvement because while you could mod Boneworks, and I did, it was a total pain to do so. Having the proper tools opens up so much after you've beaten the campaign. You can get new weapons, new levels, new avatars, and speaking of those avatars, that's one of the other big selling points of Bonelab. You can swap avatars on the fly, and every single avatar has its own stats. If you have longer legs, you're going to run and jump faster. If you're stronger, then you can pick things up easier, and melee combat's going to be easier as well, and just frankly more fun. You can be incredibly tall, you can be incredibly short, and the amazing thing about this is that it changes the world scale on the fly. I have never seen a VR game do this. Now, in other VR games, you're allowed to change the world scale, but typically you pause the game, drag a slider, then things adjust, and this is just to look more natural. It's not really a gameplay element. But in Boneworks, this is straight up a gameplay element. And with modding tools, you can throw your own avatar in there. Unlike an experience like, say, VR chat, this is a quote-unquote actual game. I don't mean it in that way, but you know what I'm saying here. There are linear levels with enemies and weapons and ways to play the game. So adding your own custom avatar that will automatically gain stats that changes how you play the game is huge. And they did advertise this a lot. This is their selling point of the game. So then why do I unlock it halfway through the campaign? Keep that nugget of knowledge in your brain. It's one of my big disappointments. First, let me talk about the graphics because they have been improved from the original Boneworks. Well, kind of. This game mostly looks the same from the original Boneworks. There's been some lighting improvements and whatnot, but the big improvement is optimization. Even on my beefed up rig, Boneworks still lags in certain rooms, to the point of almost being nauseating. This was a really big problem with the original game, and boy, if you modded, it became an even bigger problem. However, while playing through Bonelab, I never had a single bit of frame drop. I cannot overstate how important it is to maintain a solid frame rate while playing VR. If it dips, you're gonna start feeling sick. Or at very minimum, it's very jarring. Now, the main reason for this is because this game also released on the Quest. But from what I've experienced, they didn't seem to gimp the PC experience just because they needed to release it on the Quest, as we've seen so many times before, so that's nice to see. So while yes, there hasn't really been a massive improvement graphically, optimization to me is way more important than adding new content and improving the graphics. I'd rather have the game run well. But okay, let me talk about why the campaign disappoints me. If you recall, my Boneworks video was basically just 20-30 minutes of me ranting about how awesome this game is and why it's one of the best experiences I've ever had in gaming. It reminded me of that time during the mid-2000s where every game was just a new thing, everything was revolutionary, and it was some of the best times I had ever had in gaming. Boneworks had that same vibe to me. If you want to watch that video, click that video up there, I would highly recommend it, and then come back to this one, it'll make this video make a lot more sense. Bonelab doesn't have that feeling, mostly because the gameplay is just kind of more Boneworks, but worse. The but worse part is the big problem here. If you just gave me another Boneworks campaign, I would have been totally content with that. Because Boneworks did leave some basic stuff out, like for example, a shotgun. There was no shotguns in Boneworks, and in Bonelab there is a shotgun that's incredibly fun to use. Oh god, it's in the wall. It's in the wall. No, my shotgun! What the fuck bullshit? What the fuck was that? It just ate it through the wall. First, let me explain how you even access the campaign to begin with. You'll play a couple of introductory levels that start basically where Boneworks left off, and this is pretty awesome. And then you're chucked into this Bonelab hub. From here, most people have no idea how to access the main campaign. It's incredibly cryptic. All these doors here lead you to little like mini games. I mean, this is the hub. This is just the place to experiment with VR stuff. What you need to do to access the campaign is open this big quarantine door over here, which you don't know what's actually behind that quarantine door. It's never stated that's how you access the campaign. You just know you can't access it, because if you try to press the red button to open the door, nothing happens. Instead, you have to walk up here, put this power inside of these generators, and then activate the crane. You have to move this crane to pick up lights on top of every one of these doors. The lights spawn after you at minimum enter the door and then leave. You use the crane to pick up all 6 of these lights and move them into the power cells, and there you go. You got power, you can open the door now. Who is going to think to do this? Why would you lock your campaign behind something cryptic like that? Now, I actually didn't do this to play the campaign at first. If you go to this menu, there's an arrow that's pretty easy to miss and you can select the first level. However, selecting this just kind of dumps you into the first level. It's missing the connecting level between it, so it makes you feel like you've missed content. Because you have. Not really any important content, but the fact that you're blatantly missing something sticks in your mind. You don't know if you're going to try to load into another level and miss one entirely. I have seen so many threads on Steam of people asking, how the hell do I play this game? I've seen threads of people assuming there isn't even a campaign because they don't know how to access it. And it's not the only time it doesn't explain something. You see these capsules all throughout the single player levels. Opening these will just kind of unlock stuff in the sandbox mode. Now, Boneworks had these as well, but you carry them throughout the level and dump them into a receptacle to unlock some new stuff. If you played the first game, you just automatically assume that's what you do with these in the second one, but that's not what you do. So then how do you open these? Now, almost everywhere else in the game is going to have some sort of tutorial prompt on your controller telling you what to do, but not here. I didn't know what to do, so I just kind of tossed these aside because I didn't want to carry them with me and I didn't know where to put them anyway. But once you get to about halfway through the game, you come across this big capsule, and you have to open this one to end the level. I didn't know what was going on here. I thought maybe the scripting broke and something wasn't happening or working correctly. So I loaded back to the main hub and tried to select the next level. But there's a big skip from like level 7 to level 13 or something. And keep in mind, halfway through the game, you still don't have access to all the other avatars. So by skipping forward, you need avatars to complete that level. So there's a huge chunk of content you're missing, and now you have less options in-game. So not telling me how to open these capsules is actually a really big problem. You know how you're supposed to open these capsules? You just grab them on each side and pull them apart left and right, even though they look like a vertically opening Pokeball. You could have just explained that. I'm not alone, by the way. I've seen so many people saying they wandered around this level not knowing what to do because it wouldn't end either. It didn't help that later on I genuinely did have a scripting error and the game just wouldn't open this door. It's supposed to automatically open after I kill the enemies, but it didn't, and then I reloaded the level and then it opened the next time. But it gets even more cryptic. Because if you didn't use that crane to access the campaign, and you just selected the level on the main menu, you will eventually be completely stuck. You will have to open up this door. You know how I mentioned that there's a sudden gap between levels you can choose? Well, those levels are accessed by opening this door. They're not on that screen at all. So while yes, you can access the campaign without doing the crane thing, eventually you're going to have to, and if you didn't figure that out, you'll just have no idea how to complete the game. Cryptic stuff like this really needs to be removed from the game. It causes confusion, you don't know if you're missing content, there's just no reason for this to exist. But okay, let's say it doesn't exist. The campaign still disappoints me because that's a relatively minor issue compared to all my other complaints. Frustratingly enough, the first few levels and the last few levels of the campaign are genuinely as good as Boneworks, but the middle is just completely pointless. The first few levels just kind of chucks you into combat and starts where Boneworks left off, all good. And I honestly don't have much to say about these levels. If you play Boneworks, then you already know what's here. Aside from the inclusion of a shotgun, that's really the only difference. And you will play a good half of the game, a good 3 hours, before you even get access to a new avatar. So nothing is different. That whole avatar changing thing, the whole thing that they advertise this whole game on, doesn't exist for half the campaign. And once it does, the levels where they introduce these avatars are awful. For example, they introduced the short avatar to you by putting you on the moon. Now, this level is cool set dressing and there is low gravity, but there's no enemies, there's nothing to do. This means nothing to the short avatar. Like, what are you trying to teach me with the short avatar? All you have to do here is climb on top of one of these things, grab this capsule, and unlock the avatar. Why didn't you show me some enemies to really get a proper view scale of the world? Show me how short I actually am. Show me how to fight bigger enemies. Have me crawl through some vents. The world scale is different. Introduce this to me. You get introduced to a female avatar. This is the less egregious one, but all you're doing here is running faster and jumping higher. It's supposed to be a parkour style thing, but again, there's no enemies, so this is just a blatant tutorial that isn't very fun. They introduced the tall enemy by just having you climb up this tower with enemies that can change your avatar at will. How does this teach me that I'm tall at all? What the hell does this have to do with anything? Not only is this level incredibly annoying, but it's just pointless. But the worst one of all is this stupid weeb avatar. Not because it's a stupid weeb avatar, if you can tell I'm not a huge fan of anime tropes, but because it's just pointless. I'm not a big fan of anime, but if it's a good anime, I will watch it. If it's something like Cowboy Bebop or Princess Mononoke, sure, fine, I'm down. That's sick. That stuff's really good. The characters just have to act like actual people, and there has to be some sort of writing instead of just anime tropes, which is most of it nowadays. Or at least most of it that makes it over here anyway. Anyway, more importantly, like I said, this character is totally pointless. The stats indicate this character is lighter, and this benefits the game how? There's never any puzzles involving this character. You never need to swap to this character. They don't ever have fans that can blow you into the air only with this character because this character is lighter. Like, there's no point to it. It's just because they wanted an anime character in the game. And when you're introduced to this character, you have to do a forced time trial go-kart run. What does this have to do with anything? This is the only vehicle you get to access in the whole campaign. So now you're suddenly forced to drive this go-kart around, which handles like ass. Acceleration is pushing up and down on the right C-stick, which is so awkward. I cannot begin to explain how weird that is. It almost feels like I'm trying to play left-handed. I could not control the go-kart like this. I understand not having the acceleration on the trigger because you can still shoot people while driving it around, but at least put it to the left analog stick instead. Also, this is guaranteed to get a lot of people sick, and it's forced into the campaign for absolutely no reason at all. How is this a level? There's something very similar just before you get to the avatars too. This is just a roller coaster run where you're shooting targets. There's no goal. You don't have to get a certain amount of points. You're just here. You could literally take your headset off, leave, and come back 5 minutes later and just skip the level. It's pointless. It doesn't need to exist in the campaign. These are things that should be existing in the Bonelab hub. A side game, a little mini game for fun, not in the main campaign. Like, seriously, what does this teach me for this weeb character? Nothing! There's no connection! Now, I could give better examples of what you should have done here, but the game actually already has one really good example. The first new avatar you get is this strong bald dude, and even the first area of this level was more polished than the other avatar examples. Because this first area, you're in a bathroom with a mirror that makes sense. When you get introduced to the other avatars, it's almost like you're in VR chat, just this big mirror in front of you. This doesn't seem like a logical location. Like, it very much so feels like there's just suddenly a tutorial in the middle of the game, but the tutorial doesn't actually teach you anything. Anyway, with this bald dude, you are stronger, so you can pretty much one-hand most melee weapons in the game easily. You want to put a bat in each hand and just go wild? Feel free. This whole level is almost like Streets of Rage or Hotline Miami shoved into Boneworks. It's awesome. And this is the one time where the music actually really fit the game. That's another massive disappointment, actually probably the biggest disappointment I have with Bonelab, the soundtrack. Boneworks has one of the best soundtracks I have heard in any game. Not only is it just very good music I could listen to on its own, but it matches the tone of the game. One of the criticisms I have with Boneworks is that the storytelling itself isn't great. However, the atmosphere is fantastic. Something about this world just feels lonely and empty, and it leaves you very curious, or at least it did for me. And this music is a big part of that. I never had this experience with Bonelab. The music just kind of existed for the sake of existing, and some of the music is kind of out of place. This level here is the one time where the music was awesome, and it fit exactly what you were doing. It's very clear this level got a lot more polish and focus than other levels around it. This level is what every single avatar introduction should have been like, teaching you what the purpose of this avatar is and giving you a fun level based around that gimmick. Also, it should have been at the beginning of the game. You should get access to all these avatars right away. That's the selling point of Bonelab. So why do I have to play through 3 hours of the game, roughly half of the campaign, before you even start introducing this to me? Is it because you wanted to keep replay value? Is that it? That's not how you do that. You don't take things away from the game to force people to play them again. You just make a fun game and then people will want to play it again. I played through Boneworks so many times. The really frustrating thing about this is that the last few levels after you get all of the avatars and you can change as you will are really, really good. The game is finally hands-off. It's just giving you linear single-player missions where you can tackle enemies as you wish, and occasionally there's a puzzle that has to do with changing your avatar. And also now there's finally some world building. You're seeing writings on walls, you're starting to see the story come together, you want to know what's going on. This is what the whole game should have been. If you shifted this avatar introduction too close to the beginning of the game and made the whole rest of the game stuff like this, it would have been a worthy sequel, way better than the original Boneworks. But it's not. Now, there is hope. With the modding tools, I'm hoping someone is going to mod in the entirety of Boneworks campaign with its music, and then that would actually just invalidate Boneworks. If you can play the Boneworks campaign smoothly without interruption in Bonelab, then you would genuinely have no reason to buy Boneworks. Alternatively, what I'm hoping that Stress Level 0 does is just release DLC to play Boneworks in Bonelab for like $5 or $10. I would prefer this because it would be much better optimized and just have more polish to it. And maybe add in some of the guns from Bonelab, give me a shotgun in Boneworks, like this stuff would be awesome. That really is the saving grace for Bonelab. All the stuff around the campaign, not the campaign itself. Because everything else around the campaign is awesome, and having mod tools and all this modding stuff here makes it really good. But I just can't help but feel disappointed by the campaign. You get glimpses of how awesome it could have been, but that's all it is, glimpses. Few first levels, the few last levels, one level in the middle, and that's about it. So final conclusion, I think Bonelab focused on things that most people didn't care much for. I think most people were buying the game just to have a good, solid campaign, not for all the stuff around it. Except for mods. Mods are always an awesome selling point. But the first thing you want to do when you jump into a game is beat the campaign. And if that's a really good campaign, you're probably going to play it time and time again. For Bonelab, there's a few levels I'll probably play a few times, but then never again. I'll probably just play the mods a lot. Which, by the way, there's no Steam Workshop. The reasoning for that is they didn't want to leave out the Oculus Quest, which I get it. It means people will probably upload things to the Steam Workshop and nowhere else, but like, god damn it. I know it's as simple as drag and drop, but like, I just want to click subscribe on Steam Workshop. I know, first world problems. I should just be happy it's there at all though. It's very rare to get a developer that actually embraces mods nowadays, so I'm going to praise them in that regard. We've seen some huge mods for Half-Life Alyx, and I'm fully expecting the same kind of thing for Bonelab. But I think I've said everything about Bonelab. I hate being negative when it comes to this game because I really look forward to it, and I don't have a way to make this video without sounding like I'm saying it's totally not worth your money and complete trash when that's not really what I'm trying to say. What I'm really trying to say is that the campaign is disappointing, but the whole package is quite good. And that should sum up this video. Huge thanks goes to IntoTheAM for sponsoring this video. If you want to get things 10% off, go to IntoTheAM.com/dragonshirts and you can get stuff like this. Huge thanks to everyone that joined me over on Twitch while I was streaming. That's what those names are up there at the top. They're my Twitch subs. If you subscribe on Twitch, you get to see my videos ahead of time. And of course, a huge thanks goes to all of you for watching this video.